Hi, welcome to Keto Biography, formerly known as Less of Me Success Stories. I am one of your hosts, Natalie Shamp. At Keto Biography, Robin and I aspire to share inspiring stories of healing. We illuminate personal journeys that demonstrate the life-changing power of the ketogenic lifestyle, empowering our listeners with wisdom while building a thriving community. Robin, please tell us who our guest is today.
Sure, I'd love to. So today's guest sent me a very impressive bio, and I think I might take all of our hour just reading through it. So I'm just going to reduce it down to a quick, easy bites here. So
Yeah.
she is a woman of faith, an author, and an advocate. She has not only freed herself from sugar addiction with an incredible personal journey, but she has also dedicated her life to helping others on their transformation journey. I loved her most recent book, Sugar Freed. Let me grab it here. Stop losing the weight loss battle, start gaining the victory. And I can't wait to talk to her about everything. Please welcome Christine Trimp to Keto Biography. Hello, Christine.
Thank you. Hello, Robin and Natalie. Thank you so much for having me today. I'm really delighted to be here with you ladies.
Oh, I'm so thrilled to have you on today. I gotta say, I read your book, and you can see I have a little collection here behind me of books. But it's not every day that I read a book and actually specific people pop into my brain that I
Mm.
need to share this book with. But
Oh,
your book did that the entire time. It was like every time I turned the page, I thought of someone and was like, I need to share this book with them, and I have. So
thank
what
you.
what I may not have done, but I will put it on my list, is I may not have written my Amazon review, but I promise you I'm going to do that. If you've read her book, please leave a review. That's very important. But I just it really it speaks. It's not just a book about this is what you can do to change your life. It's
Mhm.
really a book that speaks to the inside out. And
Mhm.
I just had to have you on. I was like, first I have to finish. Like, as soon as I started the book, I was like, I'm going to ask Christine on. And then I said, no, 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 let me finish the book. Maybe I hate it in the end. Maybe she ties it up and I don't like where it goes. But that's not what happened. I loved it cover to cover. So, welcome. Please, I'm going to turn it over to you to share with us all about how this came about, your whole journey.
Right. The sugar-freed method in my way of life. If you would have told me 10 years ago that I'd be sitting here talking to you ladies on a podcast, I would have not believed you for 1 second because I was very comfortable in my corporate career as a 32-year accountant. I was a controller for a physician organization, but I was also 100 pounds overweight, morbidly obese, and the chronic health issues were piling up. And, I woke up every day and I lived with it, but I was chronically exhausted. And finally, I got to a place in my life where something was about to shift and I least expected it, but my husband and I went off to an anniversary trip to the Rocky Mountain National Park, which is a beautiful place to go and visit. If you haven't been there, I highly recommend it. And my husband rarely gets out of our home state of Michigan, so I was super excited to show him around Colorado where I've been before. He made some plans to go on hikes, and we were at the Bear Lake stop, which is a very popular stop at that park. There is a 1 mile hike around Bear Lake that is fairly flat. And we did that. And I was like, okay, I can do this. Right. And so he says, let's go hike up to Nymph Lake, which is also at the Bear Lake stop. And I walk over to the trail marker with him and I see it's a half a mile. And I'm like, oh, half a mile. I can do this. I can do a half a mile. But I went about halfway up that path and I could not do half a mile. My body was saying no. I was gasping for air. I was really frustrated with myself, really disappointed. I ended up telling my husband that I just could not go another step. And he said, "Are you sure?" And I'm like, "Yes, I'm positive. Please just go to the lake. I'll just sit here." There was a stump on the side of that path. And I just sat there. And in that moment, I had many conversations rolling about in my mind. I write about some of them in my book, Robin, if you remember. I was beating myself up with what I believed that other hikers were saying about me. Like, well, if she just exercised more, she wouldn't have to sit on the side of the path. Or if she ate less, maybe she'd be able to climb up this path. So it was a really, really deep emotional moment in my life. And I really credit like that low point in my life for actually being the turning point in my life. Because I do remember part of the conversation in my mind too was I'm not even 50 years old yet. And I'm wondering if I'm going to be alive to meet my grandchildren. And I was just so exhausted. I felt like I couldn't go on living like this. And something shifted in my heart. I love how you opened and introduced that this really is an internal journey that has taken place, because I can look at that moment and I know that something shifted in my heart, because I remember just saying a simple prayer like, God, I just want to feel better. Just want to feel better. At that point, I had been dieting, yo-yo dieting for 30 years. I never thought in my wildest dreams that I'd ever get to a healthy weight, because I was so sad and frustrated by, losing a little bit, gaining more, losing a little bit, gaining more. Being stuck in a cycle of yo-yo dieting is super depressing. And I lived with that, carried it secretly, if that makes sense, because I wore a mask really well. I wanted people to believe I had it all together and that I was a really happy person. But all of those years, I actually was quite miserable and really didn't express to anybody how upset I was about my health condition. But yes, that little tiny prayer, God, I just want to feel better. Something shifted. And I came home from that trip also because my husband had told me that my snoring was obnoxious in the altitude of the mountains. We live at sea level, so I'm sure it did get a lot worse. But I came home and I finally decided to take my first medical intervention, which was a sleep study, to begin this journey of getting healthy. Because like I said, in that moment, I felt like I can't go on living like this. There has to be a better way. And so I'm really grateful for that lowest point in my life on the side of a mountain where I actually love mountains. I love mountain ranges and climbing mountains. And so it's kind of really special too that it happened there. And so I came home and started on this. Looking back now, I call it my sugar-free journey because it was a step-by-step path that I took to find freedom from these weight loss woes, these weary years of wandering in the weight loss desert and being free from sugar, learning that I was a full-blown sugar addict and what it was doing to my health. That was that day. That was September 28th, 2015. Almost 10 years now.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That you've been able to continue this journey. Like everybody says, it's unsustainable. And here you are still continuing this journey after 10 years. I was actually not ignoring you. I went to the Rocky National Park page because I actually was there last summer.
Yeah.
My family, my dad lives in Colorado, and he was like, let's do this big vacation. And I was thinking about where we went. We were up in the tundra on the trail. Let me say the right thing. The Roger Toll Memorial, which is really cool. I don't know if you got up that high, but
yes.
So yeah, you go up this very steep trail to this rock that has this memorial on top of it. Is amazing. But the whole time I was there and I was walking, I was looking at the general population who was walking there. And my heart was bleeding because so many people want to see these things, but the physical activity involved, it's not just driving on the road and look, there it is. You got to get out and do some walking, hiking at elevation. And the people just can't do it. I saw you weren't alone there, right? I saw other people while I was there just standing. There weren't benches, but just standing and just trying to catch their breath and trying to make it up there. And it's just, like I said, my heart was bleeding because it's this being trapped in your own body thing, and all of that self-talk that you had.
Yes.
Every single one of these people is experiencing while they're on vacation, but then also probably just like you, secretly on the everyday having these conversations and not realizing that they can get out of it.
Right.
But you had that moment. And you heard this call and you did the things that you needed to do to make the changes. So what was that process?
Yeah, well, the first thing I did, I came home and I made that sleep study, which I had been putting off for probably at least 10 years. It got to a point where when my weight went over 180 pounds, my snoring got obnoxious. And I was definitely there. I was probably about 230 pounds at that time. I didn't weigh myself a lot, but I know in that season of my life, my weight fluctuated right around there. And so I definitely needed a sleep study. And I have to tell you, I did not want to come home with a CPAP machine. That just sounded miserable. But I am so grateful I did, because that medical intervention was really the first step that I needed to take to get on this path, because I began waking up refreshed for the first time in years. And I was like, wow, that's what better sleep feels like. Because I was not sleeping well, besides the tossing and turning and how difficult that is when you're extremely overweight. It's just not comfortable to be in bed and trying to sleep. So I'm very grateful for that. And then I also, at the same time, I feel like this was God's hand over my life. He's saying, okay, and I'm going to put you through this trial and this trial and this trial, because I really want to get your attention. Shortly after my sleep study, my painful ovarian cyst started flaring up again. That had happened occasionally over the decades. And it got so unbearable that my doctor wanted to do an ultrasound to make sure I didn't have ovarian cancer or something. And during the ultrasound, it was discovered that I had fatty liver disease. And I was like, oh my goodness, like, what does that mean? People don't really, like, we hear about it every once in a while in the news, but I don't think people have a big understanding of how prevalent fatty liver disease is with our, people that eat a Western standard diet. So that really is what set me down the rabbit hole of learning about what sugar and the standard American diet, which is higher in carbohydrates, was doing to my body, doing to my metabolism, doing to my health, contributing to the chronic disease that was piling up. And I got really super curious about why my liver was full of fat. I landed on a bunch of things. Unfortunately, I didn't bookmark it, but the first thing that really resonated with me was my liver was full of fat because of the excess sugar that I was eating. It was storing it as fat in my organs. And one phrase that I read, sugar is a major hormone disruptor. And then I started getting very interested in my hormonal health. And then step by step, I just went on this journey. The first thing I did is I decided to quit sugar, the sweet stuff. And so I quit coffee cold turkey, because I was having a little bit of coffee with a whole lot of flavored creamer, the sweetest stuff. That's how I was starting my day every day. And so that was the first step I took. A couple of days later, I decided to stop eating. I didn't eat a lot of candy, but you know how when you work in a corporate office with a bunch of women, there's candy dishes sitting everywhere, and you would just mindlessly grab a Tootsie Roll or something like that. Then I decided to swear off cakes, pastries, the weekly birthday celebration at work, just things like that, and started reading ingredient labels and stopped buying food that had added sugar in it. So I did that for about 10 months of, strictly not eating the sweet sugar, reading ingredient labels, but my weight loss was so slow. Over that 10 months, I only lost about 18 pounds, and I could not figure out why, because I felt like I was making this huge sacrifice and that I was doing so well. I was sticking to the no white stuff sugar. And then I just got more curious and had a conversation with a friend, and she said, hey, have you ever heard of this Dr. Jason Fung? He's a nephrologist in Toronto, and he talks a lot about fasting and hormones, because we were talking about hormones at lunch. And just that little seed that she planted with me, I went home that night, I Googled hormones and fasting and landed on the Diet Doctor website and a short video series by Dr. Fung called What is Fasting? And there was one thing that he said in that video that just completely changed my life. Because again, I'm thinking I'm doing all the right things, right? And my weight loss is very slow. I'm getting really frustrated. And he looked in the camera and he just said, this is not your fault. And I was like, what? What do you mean this is not my fault? For all these years, I had been carrying the heavy emotional weight of not being able to be successful at weight loss and maintaining a healthy weight. And so I learned so much from him that in that short 5-part video series that I completely changed my life that day. That was the last day I ate bread, potato, pasta. Because I wasn't eating any sweet stuff at that time, but I was still eating bread, potato, pasta, thinking whole wheat bread was a healthy choice. Whole wheat pasta was a healthy choice. And when I learned what that was doing to my metabolism, I stopped cold turkey that day. The rest of the carbohydrates that I was keeping in my diet that was keeping me stuck in metabolic dysfunction and still insulin resistant. So that is like my major medical new advice, being open-minded to something new that really changed my life. And that's really where the change in my weight and my chronic health conditions really took off. And I was able to reverse all of that.
Yeah, that's, I mean, impressive. A lot of people really struggle with that cold turkey moment, but I think probably the path and the walk that you're taking in your faith probably helped you there with that.
Yeah.
But do you recall any like major issues that came up when you did it in that way? Because sometimes people really struggle with that. So
yeah, maybe I shouldn't have said cold turkey. I should have said cold turkey in my beloved carbohydrates. Like, I love potatoes. I loved bread. I was filling up on bread at every meal. I'm an Irish girl. We had potatoes for dinner every dinner. So cold turkey with those carbs that were keeping me stuck in morbid obesity still. But I believe that it was easier for me because I had already detached from the sweet stuff. So my sugar cravings had quieted quite a lot. But I know that I still was craving carbs in the manner of like, well, I want to have my potatoes, I want to have my bread. I had not completely overcome any form of that carbohydrate addiction yet. But I think because I wasn't eating the sweet stuff, it made it a little bit easier. I did not experience the keto flu. For example, that day I landed on the Diet Doctor website, I did the 2-week challenge, the 2-week keto challenge, and committed to it faithfully, did not deviate from it at all. And I did not experience the keto flu. And I believe that's because I had already eliminated so much sugar from my life. But I was still consuming quite a bit of carbohydrates on my plate every day.
oh, sorry, I have a cold, so I was just coughing. My bad. So, uh, so what did you turn to then instead of all of that stuff? I'm the same way. First of all, I was drinking brown sugar, heavy cream, and probably just some regular sugar with a splash of coffee. That's where I started off too. So I totally get that. Like, I wasn't just doing sugar; it was brown sugar in my coffee. And then also, I'm a chip person from way back. I mean, like,
Potato
if
chips.
there was chips, I was eating them. So
yes.
So what did you transition to?
Yeah, and potato chips were my thing too, Robin. They were my favorite. I transitioned to that. I took the challenge, and that Diet Doctor 2-week challenge actually had meal ideas, keto meal ideas. And I didn't follow the plan exactly because that would have been cooking a lot of different meals, but I picked like 5 recipes on that challenge that I could repeat. And so I would make those recipes and I would eat them for a couple of days. And I stuck to that. And I lost about 10 pounds in that first 2 to 3 weeks of sticking to keto with no deviation. And so it didn't cause me the keto flu or any discomfort. In fact, I remember sitting about 10 days into that challenge, sitting at the dining room table and looking at my husband and saying, something very strange is going on. Like, I had this tremendous amount of energy. My brain fog was completely gone. I had so much clarity. And I'm sure that was like, I was experiencing, being fueled by ketones and being in a full state of ketosis at that time. So that is kind of where I started. And then I just continued to eat very low carb. I kept my carbohydrates under 20 grams of carbs a day. And I would focus on my meat and protein, which is not something I ever did in the past. I used to eat like a little bit of meat and a whole lot of pasta or a big serving of rice, and of course, don't forget the bread on the side. So I started eating more meat than I ever thought I could eat. in my lifetime. Like I would double my portion of meat or sometimes even triple it. And just went from there, focusing on protein first, healthy fats, got rid of all the, the unhealthy fats in my way of eating. And then very low carb. I do still eat occasionally like low carb veggies. I actually love cauliflower and broccoli and asparagus and Brussels sprouts, all those things. So I will still consume those as side dishes occasionally. But for the most part, I became all in on really getting my protein needs met, especially as I was approaching menopause at that age too. So I was perimenopausal and just about to go into full-blown menopause.
Yeah, and we don't consider how much the importance of protein a lot, especially women. They just don't like to prioritize protein, and it's so important in so many ways. I mean, we use it. Yeah. Of course, you can get too much, and then that's a whole different can of worms. But I think it's just hard to get to enough for a lot of people.
Yeah. Right.
So but you're basically keto. You're keeping it under 20 grams of carbs. Were you testing for ketones or just feeling them?
Yeah, I'm super curious. I'm a type A person. I'm an accountant by my career trade. I love numbers. I love pie charts. I love graphs. I love all kind of data. So yes, of course I was testing. At first, I just got the urine test strips. They were turning dark purple. I was like, oh, this is super cool. And then I eventually got a Keto Mojo and began testing my blood ketones and my blood glucose and just seeing, the state of ketosis that I'm in. I don't test a whole lot now. I mean, I've been doing this for so many years now. There's no reason for me to do that other than just out of pure curiosity or to guide my coaching clients on like, this is how we do it. And I do it with them for a week just to get them, some consistency in what they're looking for too. But yes, definitely testing and definitely knowing. I mean, the amount of energy that I have now compared to how I used to live when I was overweight and obese, I can't even believe how much energy I have. I used to want to nap every day. Like at 2:00, I would have that, post lunch carb sugar crash and want to take a nap in my office. And I never experience anything like that anymore. That is one of the biggest, I say, non-scale victories of this journey for me.
I agree with you, Christine. I wish that people could feel the euphoria energy. That's what I feel like it is. I've never felt an energy like this because I don't think I've ever experienced it my whole life.
Right.
I'm wondering if, like myself, I started this way of eating. I had a divine intervention. I feel like I heard somebody talking about this way of eating on the day that I was meant to open my ears and listen. Probably told me 5 years before that, maybe even 6 months before that, I would have been like, anyway, kind of a thing. I would have brushed it off. I started this journey because I wanted to lose weight. I was like you, I was yo-yo dieting. I think we've all been there. We've done it all, and super cleanse and whatnot and anything, And so my question, I didn't know all of the things that I had, all my ailments, if I'm being honest. I mean, I know I didn't feel good, but I didn't realize how many ailments I had until I didn't have them anymore. I wondered if that was a similar experience for you. I know we've talked about your weight loss, but did you find that there was a bigger picture in all of that?
Oh, absolutely. I have had so many healing benefits that I never even thought of. Like, I didn't think I wanted to lose weight and quit sugar so that my cystic acne would stop erupting monthly. I was living with daily headaches, and I'm positive that was probably like a sugar rebound, or I was living on chewing, taking Excedrin every day for the headaches. I would have monthly migraines because of my cycle. That stopped. Pain and inflammation. Like, I was facing knee replacement surgery, and the doctor told me, if you don't get this weight off, you're going to have surgery in 10 or 15 years. That's not an issue anymore. I mean, there's just so many other benefits, but, and as a woman of faith, one of the most amazing things is that I realized how moody I used to be and how my emotions were so dysregulated. And also I wasn't like, I was not intentionally, leaning into my faith for my health and wellness. I just thought I had to take control of this and I lacked control, or what is wrong with me? Why do I have a successful career, but I can't get this one thing right? But all of that changed, like emotional regulation, mood regulation. I went from my kids used to call me Krabby Patty, and I let them watch SpongeBob SquarePants, unfortunately. So they used to call me Krabby Patty, but I'm not that same person anymore. I have such an abundance of this joy deep in my heart now that I've never experienced. And that is just the weight loss was wonderful, but just having this heart transformation is truly what has been the best gift of all. I hope that makes sense.
It only makes sense, I feel like, if you've experienced it, or if you are experiencing it. And I 100% agree with you. This nutrition that we are getting, we're not just feeding, right? On, you guys like potato chips. My downfall was popcorn and Milk Duds. I still RIP Milk Duds and popcorn. I miss them terribly. But there is something about the empathy in your heart that just swells, the gratitude that's just overwhelming. It's not to say you still don't have, irritations and you get upset and, you have emotions, right?
Yeah.
But
right.
The mind, for me, I always talk about how I felt like I was on a hamster wheel, and I would just be super quick to anger, like, the bird before I even knew what I was doing, and then you think about it later and you're like, oh my God, I'm such a jerk. What the heck? And now, I'm not to say I don't get upset with folks, or
right,
but I'm able to logically process emotions rather than to just react. And I just tell people all the time, you have no idea, please just try. And they're like,
yeah.
I'm so, right. I feel like it's the word is getting out for that kind of a thing, but I just feel like you can't explain it to somebody who hasn't felt it. So I appreciate that you said
right.
that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love the women that I coach, the ones that show up and do the work and are getting the results, and they begin sharing these experiences too. So it's it makes me feel like, oh, I'm not alone. This didn't just happen to me. This the proper nutrition, I call it, from God's good smorgasbord. I eat from what he's created, and it doesn't need to have an ingredient label necessarily. Hopefully, that's the best way to eat. But yeah, once you experience it, it's you can't unsee what has happened to you, and not just the weight loss. It is not just the weight loss. It is the emotional health and the spiritual health. Put it all together. I really think that we were uniquely created in body, mind, spirit, heart, and soul. And the healing that took place in the ways I didn't expect are just that's why I wrote the book, Sugar Freed. Right? I tried to express it as best I can in 218 words, I think, or 218 pages. Yes.
I often think, God, what a calm world we would live in if everybody felt this.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. Peace. So much peace. Peace and joy. Yes.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And I always love to hear, obviously I come at all of this from a mental health standpoint. So everyone we talk to who doesn't realize they're on a mental health journey is in fact on a mental health journey, because as we know, the brain is connected to the rest of the body, and it does heal as well. So these stories they inspire hope, but that thought where we're like, everybody's always going at it all the time, and everybody's always, there's just so much tension in this world, and we're over here, just eat a steak. It's right. It will all just wash away. It'll be good. Eat a steak, say a prayer, eat a steak, and then, everything's going to be happy and good. So I do want to ask you more about since you brought it up, your coaching. I saw that, and this is interesting to me. I've never pursued it myself, but you are a sugar practitioner.
Yes.
So, I mean, I know about it, but can you
Yeah.
please explain that? And then also how you kind of implement that into your sugar-freed, sugar, I forgot what you call it now, sugar-freed
Sugar-free. The sugar-free method is what I
method.
call it. Yeah.
That should have
Sugar-free
been
method.
easy. It just
Yes.
went away.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
explain the sugar, because I do know that that's for like sugar addicts specifically,
Mhm.
and that is just a topic that gets overlooked quite frequently. So
Yes.
I'll let you go because I don't know much about it.
Yeah, right, Natalie. I call it the sugar shackles. Like I lived in the sugar shackles for so many years and I have been set free and I want others to be. We were talking, I have to say quickly about this righteous anger that I have. I did a Bible study this week on righteous anger because when we think about anger, we think it's a moral failure. Like we shouldn't be angry, you know, we should just live at peace and, you know, be happy and be forgiving. And yes, forgiveness is biblical for sure. But righteous anger is good. It moves us toward action. It fuels a passion. And I have a passion for seeing women set free from this. I don't want them to live another day like I lived for 30 years. And so this is why I coach. And this is why I actually invested in my own training as a sugar addiction licensed practitioner with Bitten's Addiction. And she's amazing. For those of you that don't follow her on X, you should do that. I don't know what her handle is off the top of my head, but reach out to me or one of us, we can connect you with her. So I was really, really interested in, I knew the journey that I went through. I knew what happened. And I did a lot of hindsight as I was writing my book, and this happened and this happened and this happened. What does that mean scientifically? What did that mean emotionally? What did that mean spiritually? I needed to figure it all out so that I could put it into words, so that I could put it into practice, so that I could help my coaching clients. And I'm so glad I invested in the sugar addiction training because that has it's really confirmed everything that I've experienced. And it's really confirmed what I want to share with my coaching clients and also given me the education that I need. I'm learning so much about addiction. It is fascinating, super fascinating. And to know that how I broke free from addiction and how you can continue, I say in recovery. I don't say I'm recovered because there's always, a possibility life gets stressful. If I can't handle my emotions, what's going to happen? But I'm living my very best life to prevent slips and relapses and guiding others to do the same. So addiction is super, like I said, super interesting, so much to learn about it. And I do believe that sugar and junk food high in carbohydrates, ultra processed food, I believe they are highly addictive. Hyper palatable, which means they are processed to make us keep coming back for more. And Robin, that's why we can't put down the bag of Ruffles with Ridges, extra salty, right? We're supposed to eat the whole bag. What was that Lay's commercial? I bet you can't eat just one. That's right. They want us to eat the whole bag and then go buy more. So yes, I'm really glad that I went through this addiction training because it just makes me be able to better support my clients. And what I have learned in all the coaching clients that I've had is that I would say probably 97% of my coaching clients have some level of sugar addiction. And it's not something that we go around saying like, hey, I'm a sugar addict, or hey, I'm overweight, but they don't put all the pieces together of what's going on with sugar addiction or food addiction and why everything in moderation isn't working for them.
Do you think that's a result of all of this advertising and all of the work that's going into getting us addicted, that's making it so that we just aren't thinking logically about it? Or what do you think? Where do you think it comes from?
Yeah, I think that, I hate to sound like a conspiracy theorist, but I think a lot of things in life come down to the almighty dollar, and I hate to say that, but they're concerned about profits. How much are they concerned about the population's health in this country? I don't know. I do know that I'm very excited about the MAHA movement and that people are talking about metabolic health now. And that is super exciting. And we've experienced this, ladies, before that was even talked about. So we're able to get involved and help in this effort and spread the news and be supportive of initiatives that might come forth from policymakers. And I just find it a really exciting time to have been already through this experience so that we can add our voices to our stories to help give people hope.
Oh, I absolutely agree with you. You know, government being what government is, do I expect like monumental change? No, because it is a slow ship to turn around. But
Right.
just the fact that it's in the conversation for the first
Yes.
time ever is just amazing. And we can start planting the bugs in the ear. And then just maybe people will start looking for stories and they hit upon a podcast and somebody's story
Yes.
resonates and it just changes.
Yeah.
Like there's a trickle down effect, even if it can't happen at that top level just yet
Right.
or in a quick way. It can trickle down. There's enough of us out there sharing that
Yes.
that an individual can find the help that they need
Yes.
to make their changes. So yeah, I agree. It's an exciting time, even though we do live into this wacky time where weird stuff is happening all over the place. At least we have this little thing that all of us who've been in this movement for longer than the movement existed
Right.
have something to look forward to.
Yeah.
So I want to ask now, because I'm reading the book, and I read the book, and you do talk about some of the people that you've coached in your book as part of, it's not just your journey, it's everyone's journey. So did that evolve at the same time, or did you always I know you've written another book previously, so did you always have in your mind that there was going to be another book that came out of your brain, or did that evolve simultaneously? Like when you were hearing their stories, you're like, I need to get this out there too.
Yeah. Well, I did have the honor to share 6 stories of women that I've had the privilege to coach, and they were very excited to share their stories. I started coaching in January 2021. And so these are women that I have connected with since that time and that I've actually had the privilege to coach. But my first book, going back to my first book, was a complete accident. I wrote a Christmas devotional during December 2020, which was the COVID Christmas. And I wrote that book in 25 days. I looked around the world and I had the lyrics in Oh Holy Night would not let go of my heart. It was like the weary world rejoices. And I kept looking around the world and saying, there is no joy. And by this time, I had been living metabolically healthy for a few years, and I have a ton of joy. So I felt really led to invite people on a joy-seeking journey through the Gospel of Luke that December, and it actually turned into a book. And so that's why I call it my accidental book. But that was not planned at all. But I had planned on writing a book like Sugar Freed from the time I got to my weight loss victory or a healthy weight. And I started writing the book. It was a different title then. It was called Craving Joy, because I really learned a lot in my journey about what I had been craving all of those years. And I was craving all the wrong things. So I was writing about that, but I was able to take a lot of pieces from that book and put it into Sugar Freed. But I set Craving Joy down for a season because I went through a terrific trial in life and testing and tribulations and just a really difficult family experience. And I just did not have the heart to write because it was all I could do to just keep my head above water during that season. It was a long couple of years. And I know that the reason that I sat that book down intentionally was God's hand was all over that too. Because after going through these trials, after going through these testings, the fact that I did not regain 100 pounds, that I did not return to food to cope, that I was able to maintain a normalcy in my health and wellness, that I was still living for the most part by my mantra that food equals fuel, that I was enjoying the metabolic health and wellness, that it just like I had a completely different story then. The first story was going to end on the top of a mountain, like, rah, rah, victory, come join me here. But I think that Sugar Freed, because of my experiences in the dark seasons and in the dark valleys, and still coming out, healthy and maintaining my health and focusing on my health too, which, ladies, if you're listening to this, it's okay to focus on your self-care, even when you have to care for others. Like, okay, like, because in the past I would not have done that. If I had faced the trial that I went through as my former Christine, morbidly obese, but not only just morbidly obese, but emotionally dysregulated, sad, depressed, undiagnosed depression, I would not have been able to survive that season. I would have been in my bed with the covers over my head, probably had gained another 50 pounds, just a life of misery. So living metabolically healthy helped me navigate that season really well. And I think that that's where the real testimony comes in, like the power of God in helping us when we need him most and need to lean on him the most. Because I barely had any strength through that season, but by, praise God, by his grace, I was able to navigate it well and then come out on the other side and continue to write, pick up the book again and say, okay, I'm going to get back to this. It's much more in depth now. I would not have had the heart story in there. Robin, you remember my heart acronym, this truly is a journey of the heart. My favorite verse in scripture is where David writes in Psalm 4:7, you have filled my heart with greater joy than when their grain and new wine abound. Now, for me, the grain and the new wine is very symbolic of how I used to idolize food. And that used to, I used to cope with food. It used to comfort me. But now I have a greater joy. And, thank God for that, because I know the heart is the wellspring of life now. It's filled up with joy and all the goodness from God. And I came up with this heart acronym to help readers and to help the women that I coach. And it's very simply, H is for handle your emotions. E is for examine your thoughts. A is ask for motivation. R is run with courage. And T is take action. And that is where true transformation comes in. Nothing's going to change if we don't take action. It's hard to take action if we don't look at our thoughts and our all of those really heartworthy things that we need to do to get to a healthy place in life. So that's how the second book came to be. And I think it's much more practical and emotional and a great foundation for a spiritual journey as well.
Absolutely. It really is. And you go through and you put things where you ask us to actually reflect in the book.
Yes.
And I think that's so important. Like, okay, now I got to take a second and write this down and think about it and then go back to it and refer to it again. As the way you wrote this book to really focus on a self. It is your story, but you help us turn it around on ourselves. And that's you brought up some really good points there that I'm pretty passionate about too. And that is one, it's okay to struggle. Like, we do find a joy. We've found a place where everything seems grand, but there are still struggles in life. And it's how you process through them that really has changed. Natalie had mentioned as well. So that is so important. But the second thing is valuing yourself. And I do see that more in women. I don't know if that's truly I guess we're nurturers, and maybe that's where that comes in. So we want to put everybody in front of ourselves. And you really are helping us to stop and think, I have to apply this to me because I need to make the changes that I need to make for myself and value myself before I can be of any value to anyone else that I want to help care for.
Right.
And such an important point to that story.
Yes.
And I know Natalie has a question, so I'm going to turn it to her.
Okay. I have about 26 questions, so we'll be here for about 4 hours today.
Okay.
It's two totally different questions, but one, were you a writer? Did you have any experience writing, or were you just like, you know what? I love the way I feel. I'm going to jot this down, and it just kind of comes up.
Yes, I was not a writer. I was an accountant. I love numbers. And so I'm using the other side of my brain to write. But interestingly enough, I followed in my dad's footsteps. He was a career accountant for General Motors, and that was his entire career as an executive. And then he ended up writing a book in retirement, published a book in retirement. So I guess you can say I followed in my dad's footsteps with that. And it's really interesting to discover that I had creativity. Like, I liked to be creative. And I never knew that. So it's been interesting.
That's really amazing. I can't even imagine writing a paragraph half the time, much less a whole book. So kudos to you. Although I also can't imagine being on a podcast, but yet here I am. So
right, exactly.
My second question is you mentioned Jason Fung that you found. How has your nutrition changed from, let's say, maybe the first 6 months of your journey to now? Has it changed? Have you made adjustments? And if so, what are they that you've noticed a big difference with?
I really haven't made a lot of changes. If anything, I've gone from like making keto casseroles that are a little higher in fat and just eating meat and a side of low carb veggies or something. So I actually am not very adventurous in the kitchen. So don't ever expect a cookbook from me unless my agent tells me differently. But yeah, I don't plan on doing that. I just like to cook simply. And that's typically like a pot roast in the slow cooker. And I put some cauliflower florets in it instead of potatoes. Like that's how I change that up now. Hamburger patties, chicken wings, salmon, fish. When I go out, I like to order fish because I don't like to cook it at home. But yeah, just keeping things really super simple. I don't make a bunch of complicated recipes, and I don't have the time for starters. And I'm fine with simplicity. I really do think that, and I encourage my coaching clients all the time. I'm like, I know this sounds super difficult. It's really hard to wrap your mind around, but when you get to the point of knowing and being able to live with that mantra that food is fuel every day, that's a whole level of freedom right there too. Because I don't have the obsession like I used to have about food, like, ooh, where are we going to be able to eat next? And what kind of delicious things am I going to be able to get there? Right. I used to have a lot of food noise in my mind, and that has all quieted now.
That's such a good point. I remember as a younger, like in my 20s something, they're like grandparents are like, you're not even finished with your last bite of oatmeal. And they're like, so where are we going to have dinner tonight? And you're like, what is happening? Yeah. So that I agree with you. And then there is that switch that does happen at some point in this nutritional journey, is that your mind and body sort of become one, and you're like, I don't need food for entertainment anymore. It is not here for my pleasure. I love the taste of my food. That has not changed for me in 2 years. But I also love that I know I'm nourishing myself for fuel rather than entertainment. Yeah.
Right. And I think the huge part of it for me is like, again, you can't unsee like what just happened. It's after 30 years of trying and counting my calories and eating less and moving more. Eating less left me hungry and hangry and not a nice mama, and just I can't unsee what has happened to me. And so I know what's worked. I know how I feel. And yeah, I don't think I will ever go back.
I 100% agree with you. I always think, oh, maybe I'll try that brownie. And then I'm like, I almost get like, no, I can't go back, like I freak out. So I want to mention, one of our listeners has a really beautiful thing that she would like me to say. It is a great book, so encouraging and inspiring, even for someone who has been in recovery for over a year. Thank you.
You're welcome. Love that. Thank you.
Oh, I was staying muted, Natalie, because you said you had 250 million questions. So I was giving you the...
I know. I'm sorry. I should have said, and back to Robin, but there's so much more. There's just so much, but I also want to respect your time.
Oh, we should definitely respect your time. So what would you say is the biggest theme? Like, what do you want people to get from having read your story?
Hope for freedom. because I was hopeless for those 30 years. You know, if I would lose a little bit of weight, I'd get some momentum going, and then I might try everything in moderation, and it would just not only just make me regain the weight, but it would shatter my soul. It would just break my heart that, like, what is going on? And then I'd give up again. I'd throw in the towel for a little bit until I had the resolve to, you know, give it a little bit of a best effort again. But I never thought about stepping into a freedom. And it's not just the freedom in living healthy and well. It's not just the freedom in being able to go back and hike that mountain that I couldn't get to Nymph Lake. I've been back there twice. Said, you know, I make sure to go there. I climb mountains every opportunity I get now. It's just, you know, that freedom. It's hard to put into words exactly. Like, I never take for granted what has happened to me. Again, I think, Natalie, you mentioned gratitude. This is like every day I wake up and I thank God for this gift of healing that he's given me. And I ask him to help me steward it well so that I can help point others in a direction of freedom and greater joy.
It's just amazing how all of that is connected. And that's what I really, really found so useful in your book, is that that's what you did. It was like, yeah, we can lose weight over here. We can be healthy, but it all has to come from within, and there's a greater purpose to all of this. And that just resonates throughout the entire book. And just an angle that a lot of people choose not to pursue. And you're like, I'm gonna put this out there, and because it's helping the people that I work with. It helped me, and other people need to know about it. And I mean, that in this world, unfortunately, that's like a brave step, but it's really, I think, where the step needs to come from. It needs to come from within. It needs to come from your higher power, and you need to reflect yourself in the greater good. And what better way to do that than to be at your best health? And really, that's what I took the most from your story, from your book, is that it's not just this one piece. It's an entire life change. And once all of the pieces are put together, it is a greater purpose.
Yes. Yeah. And I never thought God created me for a purpose when I was just living day to day, doing the same thing, desiring to climb back into bed because I was so exhausted. And when I first started coaching, I would not have called it coaching, but when you lose a drastic amount of weight, people notice. And I started sitting down with people over coffee locally, and they wanted to know, what am I doing? What's finally working for you? Because they'd been struggling for years too. And look back on those little coffee conversations that I had, which, by the way, if I could sit down and have coffee conversations with everybody in my world, I would love to do that. But these coffee conversations were like, okay, so this is what I'm doing nutritionally, diet-wise, but let me tell you what God's done for me in my heart and like in my mind, and just giving me a greater passion for life and thriving and living again. Like this joy and this freedom is so, I did my very best to put it into words, but really, Natalie, like you said, until you experience it, you might not be able to say, oh, Christine, I totally get what you're saying. So I hope that what I was able to write, how my book comes across, and how I am privileged to coach the women that decide to work with me, I hope that like little bit by little bit, like they can find that hope for healing and, step into that journey themselves. Because I really believe that this is what God created me to do now, is to give women, point them in a direction of health and wellness for their body, mind, and spirit too.
That's interesting. Have you gotten feedback from people who weren't on this journey, who happened upon your book, and where they have gotten that, like that it sparked, ignited in them this desire to change?
Yes, I get tons of really interesting emails and comments, and it's really encouraging. Like, when I set out to write the book, if I thought, well, if I write this book for one person, then I've done what I've been called to do. So if it helps more than one person, that's wonderful. But there's like all kinds of people out there. There's people who can, like me, hear one thing on a video and take it by the what did they say, by the horns, and just run with it and do the thing. And there's people that need a little bit of coaxing. There's people that need support and accountability, which is why group coaching is super powerful, and which is why I created the coaching community and the coaching program to work hand in hand with Sugar Freed. My program is also called Sugar Freed, so they work together. But just being, and some people will take the things that we share on X, Robin, and run with it and change their lives. But I love to be there for the women that want the extra support. Just being in a group coaching call with women that I always say to them, like, I know where you are and I know where you've been and I know where you want to be. So, let's link arms and let's do this thing.
Absolutely. That community aspect is just so valuable. So many people just feel alone in so many facets of life, and just having that community aspect and being able to bounce it off of one another, and it's just a huge piece of that puzzle. We weren't meant to be isolated at all.
No.
We definitely felt that in during the lockdown phases, and
yes,
so maybe it looks a little different because a lot of times it's not actually in person, but you're on a call, but it's still community, and it's still nurturing relationships to put everyone up an extra level. So I love that you do that, and I aspire to do the same.
Yes, and you should.
So and that's where we're trying to go here with what I do. So
Awesome.
I love that it exists in the world, and hope to be a part of that myself. So I want to be very conscious of your time, and we are hitting the mark here. So I'm going to turn it over to Natalie and queue up. Okay. We have a final question that we do for everybody. I got to make sure I have it queued up. So I'm going to turn it over to Natalie while I do that.
Okay. I also would like to just ask one more question before I go to the next. I'm sorry.
Okay? Yes, of course. You can ask a question.
Also, I might need to join your coaching community.
Yeah.
Are you able to coach throughout the 50 states? Is there a limit to where you can reach? Are your grouping sessions in person? Are they Zoom? Can you tell me just a little bit about that?
Yeah, we do group coaching on Zoom. And so really I can do anybody internationally. Most of my clients are United States, and then internationally Canada as well too, because I do everything on Eastern time zone. So what works for them. And I highly encourage people to come to group coaching live instead of watching the replays, because that's really where transformation takes place. But yes, so worldwide.
I love it so much. And I can attest to being part of a small group of one of Robin's beta group testing. I was like, I don't know what I could get out of a group, but oh my gosh, I feel like now these people are going to be my family forever.
Yes.
It really is. I wasn't expecting it. So it's such a beautiful thing to experience. So that leads us to our ending.
Okay.
We ask each guest the same question. But before we get into that, can you please tell us where we can connect with you?
Oh, okay. Awesome. Yeah. You can find me on my website, which is my name, ChristineTrimp.com. And if you look at the menu, you'll see a page for my weight loss program. You'll see a page for the book, Sugar Freed. You'll see my Christmas Advent devotional on there. And at the top, very top right of my webpage, there is a box that says start with a sample. So I would love for anybody listening to grab a sample of Sugar Freed. So you'll get a sample of chapter 3 sent to your inbox, and then we can be connected on email, and then you can just learn about what I'm doing. I hold free master classes all the time. I have a free Facebook group called Weight Loss by Faith. So connect with me so you can get into my community there too.
That's amazing. And we will put all of that in our show notes as well. So now Now, be ready for this.
Okay. I don't
Very
know. You did.
intense. Yeah, it's intense. It's an intense final question. So here it is.
Okay.
What key insight would you want to share that would help others write their keto biography?
Oh my goodness. I am a big fan and I'm always telling my coaching clients, you need to journal every part of your journey. You need to journal every part of your journey from the time I show up and we connect and I ask you your 2 why questions. Why do you need to lose weight? Why do you find yourself here? Like, what's your story? Journal, journal, journal. And that really, it allows you to like just pour out your heart on paper. You don't have to use all of it for your book, but it really gets those writing juices flowing. And I think that you might find that you are a writer. Like, there is a writer inside of you somewhere, and you can write your keto biography. So get that pen and paper out.
That is amazing. I used to write so much, and I don't write very much anymore. And
Oh,
it's definitely like I need to do this. Like I need to just get it out, and I don't do it. And I hear it all the time how important it is, and it really is. And I can see that. So I love that you said that.
mhm.
I'm receiving it. I realize I
Yes,
am one that
yes,
needs to hear that message also.
yes.
I
Good.
was actually just talking to somebody yesterday who was explaining their journey and went back to like a journal from 10 years ago and read an entry and was like, and this is what changed everything. I was like, man, I wish I
Wow.
had that. I don't have that.
Yeah.
Like I know
Yeah.
things happen, but I can't like refer to the moment. And yeah, it's just an amazing way to reflect. And then, first of all, you see where you've come from, but you also can go like, I don't want to go there again, or also feel that joy of look at what I've done, and then be able to say that in a conversation. Look, this is what happened 10 years ago.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
yeah. So it's even more important that to me, even though I don't do it, it's even more important to me that than like these numbers. Like there's numbers, but does that really connect to your heart?
Hmm.
No, not at
Yeah.
all. So love your answer. That was incredible. So I'm going to hold up your book one more time
Okay.
for those people watching. Highly recommend it. I'm going to write my Amazon review
Thank
after.
you.
Yeah, because I realize I have forgotten to do that. So if you get this book and read this book, please leave a review because it's a very important part. If it resonates and if you're like me and you hear somebody's in your head, like this is something that's important, this person needs to hear this, buy the book and send it to them. Give them that gift and pay it
Yeah.
forward. Changing lives with stories is just
Yeah.
so incredibly important. So, Christine, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing this. This time just flew by. So
It's
I know that you have a million more things I'm sure you can add. I hope that someday we could all go to the Rocky Mountains and hike together. Wouldn't that be fun?
that would be
Um,
fun.
I think of a sugar-free retreat in the mountains just sounds like I'm just going to
Mm.
throw it out there and I'll make you organize the whole thing because,
Okay, right?
but
Yeah, that,
it's when the mountains call, you got to go, right?
yeah. Yes.
And how incredible is it that you can actually answer that call now?
Yes. Now that I can. Yeah. And I even
Yes.
shared that quote in my book, The
Yeah.
Mountains Are Calling and I Must Go by John Muir, one of the pioneers of our national park system.
Absolutely. So, yep. And now we can do it. We can all get out
Yes.
there and do it.
Yes.
And we're going to help other people get there also.
Yes.
So, thank you so much on behalf of Natalie and Christine and myself. Thank you for hearing our keto biography. We'll see you next time.